The alarm blared through the bridge of the horizon's edge, cutting through the quiet hum of deep space travel. Captain Jake Morrison sat up straight in his command chair, his eyes darting to the main display screen where red warning signals flashed urgently. "Report," Jake said, his voice calm despite the sudden chaos. Lieutenant Sophie Grant turned from her station, her fingers flying across the controls. "We're picking up a distress signal, sir. It's coming from a vessel about 2 million kilometers ahead. The signature matches Valtheris technology." Jake leaned forward. The Valtheris Empire was one of the most powerful civilizations in this sector of space. Their ships were advanced, elegant, and nearly indestructible. If one of their vessels was sending out a distress call, something had gone terribly wrong. "Put it on speakers," Jake ordered. Static filled the bridge, followed by a desperate voice speaking in the flowing language of the Valtheris people. The translation software kicked in immediately. "This is Royal Transport Vessel carrying Princess Ilara. We are under attack by rebel forces. Our shields are failing. We require immediate assistance. Please, anyone who receives this message, we need help now." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what this meant. The Valtheris princess was the only heir to Queen Seraphina's throne. If she died, the entire empire would fall into chaos. But Earth Command had strict orders about non-interference in alien political conflicts. Getting involved could start a war or destroy diplomatic relationships. "Captain, what are your orders?" Sophie asked quietly. Jake looked at the screen showing the distress signal. He thought about protocols and regulations. He thought about his duty to Earth Command. Then he thought about someone dying while he sat there doing nothing. "Set course for that vessel. Maximum speed," Jake said firmly. "Sir, Earth Command specifically said we shouldn't get involved in Valtheris internal matters," said Ryan Pierce, the ship's medical officer, his voice worried. "I heard what they said, but I'm not going to let someone die when I can help them. Prepare for combat. All hands to battle stations," Jake commanded. The horizon's edge surged forward, its engines pushing the ship to its limits. Within minutes, they arrived at the scene. What Jake saw on the view screen made his stomach drop. A beautiful silver and blue Valtheris transport ship was surrounded by 4 heavily armed attack vessels. The transport's shields flickered weakly, barely holding against the constant bombardment. "Those are rebel ships," Sophie confirmed. "They're using older Valtheris military technology. Probably stolen from armories during previous uprisings. Target their weapon systems. Fire when ready," Jake ordered. The horizon's edge opened fire. Human weapons technology was different from most alien designs. Where the Valtheris preferred elegant energy beams, humans still used a combination of kinetic projectiles and plasma weapons. The rebels weren't expecting such aggressive tactics. The first rebel ship took direct hits to its weapon ports and spun away, trailing atmosphere. The second ship tried to turn toward them, but Jake was already moving. Evasive pattern Delta. "Bring us around their flank," he said. Pilot Marcus Webb grinned as he sent the ship into a sharp roll that would have been impossible for the larger Valtheris vessels. The horizon's edge was smaller, faster, and more maneuverable. They used that advantage now. Another volley of fire struck the second rebel ship, disabling its engines, but the other 2 rebels had adjusted their tactics. They split up, one continuing to pound the Royal Transport while the other came straight at the horizon's edge. "Shields at 60%, called out engineer Lisa Huang from her station. "That last hit penetrated our outer hull." Jake watched the Royal Transport on his screen. Its shields were about to fail completely. He had to make a choice. Fight the rebel ship attacking them or save the transport. All power to forward shields. "Ram that rebel ship attacking the transport," Jake ordered. "Sir?" Marcus said, his hands hesitating over the controls. "You heard me. Do it now." The horizon's edge accelerated directly toward the rebel vessel. The rebel captain saw them coming and tried to move, but it was too late. The human ship, with all power diverted to its forward shields, slammed into the rebel vessel's side. The impact sent both ships spinning, but the rebel vessel came out worse. Its hull cracked open, and emergency systems automatically sealed it away from the transport. "One rebel ship left," Sophie reported. "They're trying to flee. Let them go. Focus on the transport." "Hail them," Jake said, gripping his chair as the ship stabilized. The view screen flickered and a Valtheris guard appeared. His face was bloodied and smoke filled the background. "Human vessel, thank the stars. Our ship is dying. We have maybe 5 minutes before catastrophic failure. The princess is injured and unconscious. We cannot evacuate in time." Jake stood up. "Hold on. I'm coming over there myself." Captain, that's too dangerous, Ryan protested. Let me go. I'm the doctor. No, I need you here in case we take more damage. Sophie, you have command. Get our docking clamps ready. Marcus, bring us in close. Jake ran from the bridge toward the airlock. He grabbed an emergency vac suit and helmet, sealing himself in as he moved. Communications Officer Nina Wells met him at the airlock with a medical kit and a plasma cutter. You'll need these, sir, she said. Thank you, Nina. If I'm not back in 10 minutes, Sophie's orders are to get this ship to safety. Understood? Yes, sir. And Captain? Good luck, the airlock cycled open. Jake activated his suit's magnetic boots and pushed off toward the damaged Royal Transport. The distance between the ships was only about 50 meters, but in the vacuum of space it felt like miles. Debris floated everywhere. Pieces of hull, equipment, and things Jake didn't want to identify. He reached the transport's emergency airlock and used the plasma cutter to force it open. The moment he entered, gravity pulled him down and he deactivated his mag boots. The interior of the ship was a disaster. Sparks flew from damaged panels and bodies of Valtheris guards lay motionless on the floor. Hello? Where's the princess? Jake shouted. A weak voice called out from deeper in the ship. Here, in the command chamber. Jake ran through corridors that were starting to buckle and twist from structural damage. He found the command chamber door sealed shut. Using the plasma cutter again, he forced it open. Inside, he saw 3 guards trying to protect an unconscious Valtheris female, who could only be Princess Alara. She was beautiful in the way that seemed common among the Valtheris people, with pale blue skin, silver hair, and delicate features, but right now she was covered in blood from a wound on her head and her breathing was shallow. We must move her, but the escape pods are not working, one of the guards said. His armor was cracked and he looked exhausted. Come with me. My ship is right outside. Can you carry her? Jake asked. I will try, the guard said, lifting the princess carefully. They made their way back through the dying ship. Twice they had to change routes when corridors collapsed ahead of them. The ship was groaning and shaking constantly now. Jake checked his suit's timer. They had maybe 2 minutes before total failure. They reached the airlock, but there was a problem. The guard's suit didn't have enough oxygen to make the crossing to the horizon's edge while carrying the princess. Give her to me, Jake said. You 3 use the emergency tethers to cross. Go now. The guard looked at him with surprise but handed over the princess. She was lighter than Jake expected. He adjusted his grip, holding her against his chest with one arm while using the other to guide them toward his ship. Jake pushed off from the transport, using his suit thrusters to control their trajectory. Behind him, he heard the terrible sound of metal tearing apart. The Royal Transport was breaking up. He pushed the thrusters harder, trying to move faster. A piece of debris hit his legs, spinning them off course. Jake fought to correct their path, but they were heading away from the horizon's edge now. He could see Sophie's face on his helmet display, shouting something, but he couldn't hear over the sound of his own breathing and the princess's weak heartbeat against his chest. Then he felt something grab them. The horizon's edge had extended its emergency recovery arm, a flexible robotic appendage designed for retrieving cargo or crew. Marcus must have deployed it. The arm pulled them toward the ship with increasing speed. Jake and the princess reached the airlock just as the Royal Transport exploded behind them. The shockwave hit them hard, slamming them against the airlock door. Jake twisted his body to shield the princess from the impact. Pain shot through his back and ribs, but he held on. The airlock cycled and Ryan was there immediately with a medical team. They took Princess Alara from Jake's arms and rushed her toward the medical bay. Jake tried to follow but stumbled. He looked down and saw that debris had punctured his suit. Blood was leaking out into the pooling on the floor. Captain, sit down. You're injured, Ryan said, turning back. Take care of the princess first. I'm fine, Jake said, though he didn't feel fine. Everything was starting to blur. Sophie's voice came over his helmet comm. Jake, 3 of our crew didn't make it. The rebel ship we rammed caused explosive decompression in Section 7. I'm sorry, Jake closed his eyes. 3 people dead. 3 people who had families, dreams, and futures, all because he made the choice to intervene. He felt Sophie's hand on his shoulder. Jake woke up in the medical bay 3 days later. His body ached everywhere, and when he tried to sit up, pain shot through his ribs. Ryan appeared beside him immediately, gently pushing him back down. Easy, Captain. You broke 4 ribs, fractured your left leg, and had a piece of metal lodged in your back. You're lucky to be alive, Ryan said, checking the monitors beside the bed. The princess? Jake asked, his voice hoarse. Stable. She woke up yesterday. The Valtheris guards are watching over her in the guest quarters. She asked about you several times. Ryan replied with a small smile. Jake looked around the medical bay. It was quiet. Too quiet. The crew members we lost. Who were they? Ryan's expression grew somber. Lieutenant Danny Cole from engineering, Ensign Kate Martinez from security, and Specialist Andrew Chen from communications. They died instantly when the hull breach happened. There was nothing anyone could do. Jake felt the weight of those names settle on his chest, heavier than any injury. 3 good people gone because of his decision. He knew he would carry their names with him forever. Earth Command has been trying to contact you constantly, Brian continued. Admiral Patterson is not happy. Sophie has been handling the communications, but they want to speak with you directly as soon as you're awake. I bet they do. Jake muttered. Might as well get it over with. Help me sit up. With Ryan's assistance, Jake managed to sit upright. Sophie entered the medical bay carrying a communication tablet. Her face was tight with worry. You look terrible, she said bluntly. Thanks. You always know what to say. Jake replied with a weak smile. What's the situation? Sophie pulled up a chair and activated the tablet. Where do I start? Earth Command is furious. They're calling it an unauthorized military engagement. There's talk of a court-martial. The Valtheris Empire, however, has sent 17 official messages thanking us and requesting your presence at the Imperial Palace. Queen Seraphina herself wants to meet you. That's not going to make Earth Command any happier, Jake said. No, it's not. Ambassador Kyle Henderson has been in emergency sessions with the Diplomatic Council for 2 days straight. They're trying to figure out how to handle this. On one hand, we potentially started an incident with the rebels. On the other hand, we saved the life of the most important person in one of the galaxy's major powers. Jake rubbed his face with his hands. Politics. He hated politics. He was a soldier, not a diplomat. All he had done was save someone's life. How had that become so complicated? There's more, Sophie said quietly. Admiral Patterson is launching a formal investigation into your actions. You're being relieved of command temporarily until it's complete. I'm acting captain now. That stung more than Jake expected. He had commanded the Horizon's Edge for 5 years. The ship and crew were his family. But he understood. He had violated direct orders. There would be consequences, I understand. You'll take good care of them, Jake said, looking at Sophie. Damn right I will. But Jake, this isn't over. Half the crew wants to testify on your behalf. Lisa has already started organizing a petition. Nina has documented everything that happened every second. We're not letting them throw you away for doing the right thing. Before Jake could respond, the medical bay door opened. A Valtheris guard entered, tall and imposing in ceremonial armor. Behind him came Princess Alara herself. Jake tried to stand, but his injuries kept him in place. The princess raised a hand to stop him from trying. Please do not strain yourself on my account, she said in perfect English, though her accent gave the words a musical quality. I came to thank the human who saved my life. Up close, Princess Alara was even more striking than Jake remembered. Her silver hair was pulled back, revealing the healing wound on her temple. Her eyes were a deep purple color that seemed to glow slightly in the medical bay's lighting. She moved with a grace that made her seem like she was floating rather than walking. Your Highness, I was just doing what anyone would do, Jake said, feeling suddenly awkward. That is not true. Many would have followed their orders and left us to die. You chose differently. You chose to save strangers at great risk to yourself and your crew. In Valtheris culture, this creates a sacred bond. You have my eternal gratitude, Ilara said, placing her hand over her heart in what must have been a traditional gesture. I'm glad you're safe, but 3 of my crew died in the rescue. Their sacrifice weighs heavily on me, Jake admitted. Ilara's expression filled with sorrow. I know. I've asked that their names be recorded in the Valtheris Hall of Heroes. It is a small gesture, but your people will be remembered forever in our culture. Sophie and Ryan quietly excused themselves, leaving Jake alone with the princess and her guard. Ilara sat in the chair Sophie had vacated, studying Jake with those unusual purple eyes. I have been researching human culture since I woke, she said. You are fascinating. So violent and aggressive, yet capable of such selflessness. Your species confuses our scholars. We confuse ourselves most of the time, Jake replied with a slight smile. My mother, Queen Seraphina, has demanded your presence at the Imperial Palace on Valtheris Prime. She wishes to honor you personally. Your Earth Command is resisting, but my mother is quite insistent. When the Queen of Valtheris insists on something, she usually gets her way. Ilara said with a knowing look. I'm sure Earth Command loves that, Jake said dryly. They do not. Your Ambassador Henderson has been trying to negotiate. He wants to bring you home for your investigation. My mother refuses. She says you are under royal protection now, and the protection extends to keeping you safe from your own government's bureaucracy if necessary. Jake wasn't sure whether to laugh or be terrified. Having an alien queen interfere in human military justice could either save his career or destroy it completely. Over the next week, Jake recovered slowly while the political situation spiraled out of control. Ambassador Henderson came aboard the Horizon's Edge to meet with him personally. The ambassador was a thin man with gray hair and tired eyes. He looked like someone who had spent too many nights without sleep, which was probably accurate given the current crisis. Captain Morrison, do you understand the situation you've created? Henderson asked, sitting across from Jake in the ship's conference room. I saved someone's life. That shouldn't be a situation, Jake replied. In an ideal universe, you'd be right. But this isn't ideal. The Valtheris rebels are claiming we deliberately interfered in their revolution. They're threatening to target human colonies in retaliation. Meanwhile, Queen Seraphina is making demands that we have no legal basis to refuse. And Earth Command wants your head on a plate for ignoring direct orders. What do you want me to do, sir? Jake asked. Henderson sighed deeply. Honestly, I want you to go to Valtheris Prime, meet with the Queen, accept whatever honor she wants to give you. It might be the only thing that saves your career. If the Valtheris Empire publicly supports you, Earth Command will have a harder time making you the scapegoat. That sounds suspiciously like using politics to avoid justice, Jake said. Welcome to diplomacy. It's ugly, it's complicated, and sometimes it's the only way to survive. You did a brave thing, Morrison. A good thing. But in the process, you became a chess piece in a much larger game. Play it smart or you'll be sacrificed. Jake thought about Danny, Kate, and Andrew. They had died following his orders. If he could turn their sacrifice into something meaningful, something that helped humanity build a better relationship with the Valtheris Empire, maybe their deaths wouldn't be in vain. All right, I'll go to Valtheris Prime, Jake agreed. 2 days later, Jake said goodbye to his crew. Sophie hugged him tightly. Come back in one piece, she said. And don't let them make you into some kind of political puppet. I'll do my best, Jake promised. Lisa, Marcus, Nina, and Ryan all came to see him off. Even some of the junior crew members he barely knew showed up. It reminded Jake why he loved this job. These people were family. A Valtheris diplomatic shuttle arrived to transport Jake to their homeworld. It was luxurious beyond anything he had experienced. The interior was decorated with flowing designs and soft lighting. Princess Ilara was aboard, along with her guards and several Valtheris officials. This must be overwhelming for you, Ilara said as they departed the Horizon's Edge. A bit. I'm just a soldier. I'm not used to shuttles that look like art museums, Jake admitted, looking around at the beautiful interior. You are not just a soldier. Not anymore. What you did has changed how my people see humans. For decades, we thought your species was too primitive, too violent to be trusted. You proved that humans can be noble and selfless. That matters more than you realize. The journey to Valtheris Prime took 2 days. Jake spent most of that time learning about Valtheris culture from Ilara. She taught him basic phrases in their language, explained their customs, and warned him about the complex politics of the imperial court. Some nobles will resent you, she explained. They see humans as inferior. Your presence in the palace, honored by my mother, will offend them. Be careful, not all threats come from rebels with weapons. When they finally arrived at Valtheris Prime, Jake looked out the shuttle window and gasped. The planet was beautiful, covered in blue oceans and silver continents. Cities glowed like jewels scattered across the surface. The Imperial Palace itself was visible from orbit, a massive structure that... The Imperial Palace was even more impressive from the inside than it had been from space. Jake followed Princess Ilara and her guards through corridors that seemed to be carved from a single piece of translucent crystal. Light moved through the walls in patterns that Jake suspected meant something to the Valtheris people. But to him it was just beautiful and slightly disorienting. Everywhere they went, palace staff and nobles stopped to stare at him. Jake heard whispers in the Valtheris language. He caught a few words that Ilara had taught him. Some were curious. Others were clearly unfriendly. Ignore them, Ilara said softly. They have never seen a human this close before. You are like a legend walking among them. Some are fascinated. Others are afraid. Afraid of me? Why? Jake asked, genuinely confused. Because you represent change. The Valtheris Empire has existed for over 10,000 years. We are slow to accept new things, especially new species. Your actions have forced us to reconsider our position on humanity. That frightens those who prefer the old ways. They arrived at a suite of rooms that took Jake's breath away. The quarters were massive, with high ceilings and walls that showed projections of stars and nebulas. A large bed stood in the center, covered in fabric that shimmered like liquid silver. Everything was elegant and expensive. These are your quarters while you remain our guest, Alara said. If you need anything, simply speak your request aloud. The palace systems will respond. They have been programmed to understand English. This is too much. I don't need anything this fancy, Jake protested. You saved the heir to the throne. In Valtheris culture, that deserves significant honor. My mother would be offended if we treated you as anything less than a hero. Ilara smiled at his discomfort. Try to enjoy it. Tomorrow there will be a ceremony. You will need to rest and prepare. After Ilara left, Jake explored his new quarters. He found a bathroom with a bathing pool large enough to swim in. The closet contained clothing in human sizes, clearly prepared specifically for him. There was even a communication terminal that could connect to Earth. Jake immediately sent a message to Sophie, letting her know he had arrived safely. Then he sat on the edge of the enormous bed and tried to process everything that had happened in the last 2 weeks. He had gone from being a ship captain following routine patrol orders to being a guest in an alien palace, caught in the middle of interstellar politics. Sleep came hard that night. Jake kept thinking about Danny, Kate, and Andrew. He wondered if their families had been notified. He wondered if Earth Command had told them the truth about how they died, or if they had twisted it somehow to make Jake look worse. Morning came too quickly. Jake was awakened by a soft chime from the communication terminal. Ambassador Henderson's face appeared on the screen, looking even more tired than before. Morrison, good, you're awake. Listen carefully. Today's ceremony is being broadcast across the entire Valtheris Empire. Billions will be watching. Queen Seraphina is going to honor you publicly. This is huge for human Valtheris relations. Don't mess it up. No pressure then, Jake muttered. I'm serious. Be respectful. Follow their customs, and whatever the Queen says, agree to it. We need this alliance. The political situation back home is getting worse. There are protests. People are divided about what you did. Some see you as a hero. Others see you as a reckless warmonger. The only way through this is forward. The communication ended, leaving Jake feeling even more anxious. He dressed in the formal human uniform that had been provided, a dark blue suit with silver trim that matched Earth's diplomatic colors. Looking in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. Guards arrived to escort him to the throne room. The walk felt like miles. They passed through halls filled with Valtheris nobles dressed in elaborate robes. Everyone fell silent as Jake walked by. He kept his head up and his expression neutral, the way he had been trained during military academy. The throne room was enormous. The ceiling was so high that Jake couldn't see the top. It was lost in what looked like actual clouds. The floor was polished crystal that reflected everything like a mirror. At the far end of the room, on a raised platform, sat Queen Seraphina. Jake had seen pictures, but they didn't do her justice. The queen was tall and regal, with silver hair that fell past her waist and purple eyes darker than her daughter's. She wore robes that seemed to be made of starlight itself, shifting colors as she moved. A crown of crystal and precious metals rested on her head, but it was her presence that truly commanded attention. Power radiated from her like heat from a sun. Princess Alara stood beside her mother's throne, dressed in equally impressive formal attire. She gave Jake a small, encouraging nod. The guards stopped Jake at the base of the platform. A Valtheris official in ornate robes stepped forward and began speaking in their language. Jake's translator earpiece provided a running translation. Before Queen Seraphina, sovereign of the Valtheris Empire, keeper of the sacred trust, guardian of 10,000 worlds, we present Captain Jake Morrison of the human species, he who saved the life of Princess Alara, heir to the throne. Queen Seraphina stood, and everyone in the room immediately dropped to one knee. Jake hesitated for just a moment before doing the same, bowing his head respectfully. Rise, Captain Morrison, the Queen said in English, her voice strong and clear. Today, before our people and the assembled court, We honor your courage and selflessness." Jake stood, feeling hundreds of eyes on him. The Queen descended from her platform, walking toward him with measured steps. She stopped directly in front of him, studying his face with those intense purple eyes. "You violated your own people's orders to save my daughter. You risked your ship, your crew, and your own life for someone you did not know. 3 of your people died in this act of mercy. Tell me, Captain, do you regret your choice?" The question hung in the air. Jake thought about Danny, Kate, and Andrew. He thought about the pain their families must be feeling. But he also thought about Princess Ilara, alive and well, standing beside her mother's throne. "I regret that my crew members died, Your Majesty. I will carry that weight forever. But I do not regret saving your daughter. Given the same choice again, I would make the same decision," Jake said firmly. A murmur ran through the assembled nobles. Queen Seraphina's expression softened slightly, and she nodded. "That is the answer of a warrior with honor. In our culture, Captain Morrison, when someone saves a member of the royal family at great personal cost, it creates a sacred bond. This bond has not been invoked in over 3,000 years, but the law remains clear. Today I invoke the bond of eternal gratitude." Jake's translator struggled with the phrase for a moment. Then Ilara's voice came through his earpiece, whispering a translation. "It means you are now bound to the royal family." "You belong to us, what?" Jake said before he could stop himself. Queen Seraphina raised her hand and a holographic display appeared in the air, showing ancient Valtheris text. "The bond of eternal gratitude declares that one who saves royal blood becomes part of the royal household. You are under our protection, but you are also bound to serve us. You will remain here, Captain Morrison, as guardian to Princess Ilara. This is not a request. It is law." The throne room erupted into noise. Nobles began talking rapidly among themselves. Some looked shocked. Others looked angry. Through his earpiece, Jake could hear Ambassador Henderson swearing creatively. "Your Majesty, with respect, I have duties to my own people. Earth Command will expect me to return," Jake said carefully. "Earth Command wished to punish you for saving my daughter. They called your actions criminal. We do not recognize their authority to judge such nobility. You are ours now, Captain. The bond protects you from their judgment." Jake felt trapped. He looked at Ilara, who seemed conflicted. She clearly hadn't known her mother would do this. Ambassador Henderson's face appeared on a small screen near the throne, mouthing the words, "Agree to it." "I am honored by your protection, Your Majesty," Jake said slowly. "But I ask for understanding of my position. This is unexpected. We understand. The bond is as much responsibility as honor. You will have time to adapt. But make no mistake, Captain Morrison. You saved the future of our empire. The price is that you become part of that future." The ceremony continued with formal declarations and traditional rituals that Jake barely understood. He stood there in a daze as Valtheris officials presented him with ceremonial armor, marking him as a royal guardian. The armor was beautiful, silver and blue like the royal colors, but it felt like chains. When the ceremony finally ended, Jake was escorted back to his quarters by a full guard detail. Now apparently he had his own guards. Everything had changed in the span of a few hours. Princess Ilara arrived shortly after, dismissing the guards so she could speak with him privately. "I am sorry," she said immediately. "I did not know my mother would invoke the bond. She did not tell me. What does this actually mean? Legally, can she really keep me here?" Jake asked, sinking into a chair. "Yes. The bond is ancient law, recognized by the Galactic Council. Your Earth government cannot force you to return without causing a diplomatic incident. My mother has essentially claimed you as Valtheris citizen. You are under our jurisdiction now." Jake put his head in his hands. "I saved your life and now I'm trapped here." The first month on Valtheris Prime was the hardest time of Jake's life. Every day brought new challenges, new customs to learn, and new ways to accidentally offend someone. The Valtheris language had 17 different words for respect, each used in specific social situations. Jake got them wrong constantly. His mornings started before dawn with training in the Royal Guard's practice grounds. The Valtheris guards were skilled warriors who had trained their entire lives. They used elegant, flowing combat styles that looked like dancing. Jake's human military training was more direct and brutal. The two approaches clashed constantly. "You fight like an animal," said Commander Vex, the head of the Royal Guard, watching Jake spar with one of his soldiers. Vex was tall even for a Valtheris, with scars across his face that suggested he had seen real combat. No grace, no form. Just violence. On Earth we call it efficiency, Jake replied, breathing hard. The Valtheris soldier he had been sparring with lay on the ground, rubbing his ribs where Jake had struck him. In real fights, pretty moves get you killed. This is exactly why many of us doubted your appointment. You do not understand our ways, Vex said coldly. But Princess Alara, who often watched the training sessions, disagreed. Perhaps that is his strength, Commander. The rebels do not fight with grace either. They fight to kill. Maybe we need someone who thinks like them to defeat them. After training, Jake attended lessons in Valtheris culture, history, and protocol. His teacher was an elderly Valtheris scholar named Terran, who had infinite patience for Jake's mistakes and questions. Why do your people bow differently to the queen than to the princess? Jake asked during one lesson, frustrated after getting the gesture wrong again during a palace event. Because the queen represents the empire itself. The bow acknowledges her connection to our entire civilization. The princess represents the future. The bow to her acknowledges hope and continuation. Different concepts require different expressions, Terran explained. On Earth, a bow is just a bow, Jake muttered. That is because humans are young. You have not yet learned that meaning lives in details. Give yourself time, Captain Morrison. You are doing better than you realize. In the afternoons, Jake served his actual purpose as guardian to Princess Alara. This meant accompanying her to official functions, standing watch during private meetings and checking security for anywhere she went. It was boring most of the time, which ironically made it more stressful. Jake knew that boredom in security work was when mistakes happened. Alara herself was patient with him, more patient than Jake probably deserved. She explained the complicated politics of the court, warned him about which nobles to avoid, and helped him understand the subtle social games that everyone seemed to play constantly. That one, Lord Kalen, he despises humans. He believes we should have conquered your species years ago, rather than attempting diplomacy, Alara whispered during a formal dinner one evening, nodding toward a sharp-faced Valtheris noble across the hall. Good to know. Should I worry about him? Jake asked quietly, not directly. He is too smart to act openly against someone under royal protection, but he will undermine you when possible. Spread rumors. Make your position more difficult. Politics, Jake said with disgust. Politics, Alara agreed with a small smile. The never-ending war fought with words and subtle actions. Welcome to palace life. Despite the challenges, Jake slowly began to adapt. He found allies among the younger guards who were curious about human fighting techniques. He started teaching them hand-to-hand combat styles that emphasize speed and aggression over formal patterns. Commander Vex disapproved, but some of the guards became genuinely skilled with the new approaches. Engineer Lisa Huang visited after 6 weeks, bringing updates from the horizon's edge and news from Earth. They met in Jake's quarters, and Lisa looked around with wide eyes. This place is incredible. You're living in a palace, Jake. An actual alien palace, she said, touching the crystal walls. It's a beautiful prison, Jake replied honestly. I miss the ship. I miss my crew, and we miss you too. Sophie is doing great as captain, though. She runs a tight ship, maybe even tighter than you did. Lisa smiled. The investigation is still ongoing, but most of Earth Command now sees what you did as positive. Saving the princess has opened up trade negotiations and cultural exchanges. You might have accidentally created a major alliance. At the cost of my freedom and 3 crew members' lives, Jake said quietly. Lisa's expression became serious. Danny, Kate, and Andrew knew the risks, we all do. They would be proud of what their sacrifice achieved. The Valtheris memorial service for them was beautiful. Their families were honored properly. That matters. They talked for hours about life aboard the horizon's edge, about mutual friends in the fleet, about Earth news and colony developments. For a brief time, Jake felt connected to his old life again. But when Lisa left, the loneliness returned. 2 months into his new life, the first real assassination attempt occurred. Jake and Princess Alara were walking through the palace gardens, a regular activity that Alara insisted on despite security concerns. She said being trapped indoors constantly would drive her mad. Jake understood the feeling. The gardens were massive, filled with plants from 100 worlds. Some glowed softly. Others sang in frequencies that humans could barely hear. Valtheris guards patrolled the perimeter, but the space was too large to secure completely. Do you miss Earth? Alara asked as they walked along a path beside a stream filled with floating flowers. Every day, But I'm starting to appreciate some things about Valtheris Prime. The architecture is beautiful. The food is interesting. Your people's music is like nothing I've ever heard, Jake admitted. But you still feel trapped, Alara said. It wasn't a question. I chose to save you. I don't regret that. But I didn't choose this life. That's the hard part, knowing I'm here because your mother declared it, not because I wanted it. Before Alara could respond, Jake's training kicked in. Something was wrong. The birds in the garden had stopped singing. The air felt too still. He grabbed Alara's arm and pulled her behind him just as an energy blast scorched the air where she had been standing. Get down, Jake shouted, pushing the princess toward the ground behind a large stone sculpture. More blasts came from the trees. Jake counted at least 3 shooters, probably more. The guards were too far away to help immediately. He was on his own. Jake drew the plasma pistol he always carried now and returned fire toward the trees. He didn't expect to hit anything, but the shots forced the attackers to take cover. That gave him seconds to think. Stay behind the sculpture. Do not move, Jake ordered Alara. What are you doing? She asked, her voice scared but controlled. My job. Jake ran toward the trees, firing as he moved. It was a crazy, aggressive tactic that no Valtheris guard would ever use, but it was exactly what attackers wouldn't expect. Humans were crazy. Use that advantage. He dove behind a tree as return fire lit up the garden. Jake could hear the guards finally responding, their shouts echoing through the space. But the assassins were trying to finish their job quickly. One broke cover, rushing toward where Alara hid behind the sculpture. Jake shot him in the leg. The assassin fell, and Jake was on him immediately, disarming him with brutal efficiency. The attacker was Valtheris, dressed in unmarked combat gear. His eyes widened when he saw Jake up close. You are the human, he said in accented English. Yeah. And you just made a big mistake, Jake replied, hitting him hard enough to knock him unconscious. The other attackers fled when they realized one of their team was captured. The guards secured the area quickly, but the damage was done. Someone had tried to kill Princess Alara inside the supposedly safe palace grounds. Queen Seraphina arrived within minutes, her face a mask of cold fury. She looked at her daughter, checking for injuries, then turned to Jake. You saved her life again, the queen said simply. That's what I'm here for, Jake replied, his hands still shaking from adrenaline. The captured assassin was taken for interrogation. Commander Vex conducted the questioning personally, using methods that Jake didn't want to think about too carefully. The results were disturbing. The assassin belonged to the same rebel faction that had attacked Alara's ship, and they had help from someone inside the palace. A traitor. In my own house, Queen Seraphina said. During the emergency council meeting that followed, Jake had been invited to attend, a sign of how seriously the queen took his role now. How far has this corruption spread? We are investigating, Your Majesty, said Vex. But it will take time. The rebels are clever. They have infiltrated multiple levels of palace operations. Then we change our approach. Captain Morrison, you will take direct control of Princess Alara's security. Choose your own team. Train them your way. Commander Vex will provide whatever resources you require. Vex looked like he wanted to argue, but wisely stayed silent. The Queen's word was absolute. Over the following weeks, Jake rebuilt the princess's security detail from the ground up. He chose younger guards who were willing to learn new tactics. He trained them hard, pushing them beyond the formal combat styles they knew into something more practical and effective. He also started teaching the entire guard force about human military tactics and strategy. At first, many resisted, but after Jake demonstrated, 6 months after Jake Morrison arrived on Valtheris Prime, the rebels made their final, desperate move. The Festival of Ascension was the most important celebration in Valtheris culture, marking the day their empire was founded 10,000 years ago. Every noble family attended. Every guard was on duty. The palace would be filled with thousands of people, creating the perfect environment for chaos. Jake sensed something was wrong days before the festival began. Communications officer Nina Wells, working with Valtheris intelligence, had uncovered disturbing patterns. Shipments of weapons moving through supposedly secure channels, guards requesting schedule changes that created gaps in coverage. Small things that individually meant nothing but together painted a picture Jake didn't like. Someone is planning something big, Jake told Commander Vex during their morning meeting. I can feel it. Feelings are not evidence, Vex replied, but his expression showed concern. However, I agree. The patterns are suspicious. I have increased security for the festival. It won't be enough. If someone inside the palace is helping the rebels, they know our security procedures. They'll know how to get around them, Jake argued. What do you suggest? Cancel the festival. Vex looked at Jake like he had suggested burning down the palace. That is impossible. The Festival of Ascension has never been cancelled in 10,000 years. The Queen would never agree. It would show weakness to our enemies. Then we prepare for the worst and hope for the best, Jake said grimly. He spent the next 3 days working almost without sleep. He repositioned guards, created backup response teams, and ran dozens of attack simulations. Princess Ilara noticed his stress and tried to help where she could, reviewing palace security protocols and identifying potential weak points. The night before the festival, Jake sat in his quarters reviewing plans one more time when Ilara arrived unexpectedly. She wore casual robes instead of formal attire, and her silver hair was loose around her shoulders. She looked worried. You need to sleep, Jake. You will be no use to anyone if you collapse from exhaustion, she said gently. I'll sleep when the festival is over, and you're safe, Jake replied without looking up from his datapad. Ilara sat beside him, placing her hand over his to stop his frantic reviewing. Jake, look at me, he did. Her purple eyes were filled with concern and something else Jake couldn't quite identify. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that these past months have meant everything to me. You gave up your freedom to be here, but you gave me something I have never had before. A true friend who sees me as a person, not just as the princess. That is a gift beyond measure. Ilara, you're talking like you're saying goodbye, Jake said, suddenly uneasy. I am simply acknowledging that tomorrow is dangerous. We both know it. If something happens, I wanted you to know how I feel, how grateful I am for your presence in my life. She squeezed his hand gently, then stood and left before Jake could respond. He sat there for a long time after she was gone, staring at where she had been sitting. Somewhere along the way, his feelings for Princess Ilara had become more complicated than simple duty or friendship. He cared about her deeply, maybe too deeply. But what did it matter? She was the heir to an empire. He was a human soldier bound to serve her by ancient law. Some gaps were too wide to cross. The Festival of Ascension began at dawn with traditional songs and prayers. The palace grounds filled with thousands of Valtheris nobles, dignitaries from allied species, and important visitors from across the empire. The atmosphere was celebratory, but Jake's trained eyes saw only threats and vulnerabilities everywhere. He stood near Princess Ilara on the main platform where the royal family would observe the festival. Queen Seraphina was magnificent in formal robes that seemed to capture and reflect light, like a prism. Ilara wore silver and blue, the colors of the royal heir. Both wore ceremonial weapons, beautiful but functional. The morning passed without incident. Traditional dances, musical performances, and speeches filled the hours. Jake's security teams reported nothing unusual. Maybe his paranoia had been wrong. Maybe the festival would pass peacefully. Then at midday, when the sun was highest and the crowds were densest, everything went wrong at once. The first explosion came from the eastern gardens, then another from the western gate. Smoke and confusion filled the air. Jake grabbed Princess Ilara immediately, pulling her toward the secure evacuation route they had planned. Stay close to me. Do not let go, Jake ordered. But the evacuation route was blocked. Guards who were supposed to be protecting it instead opened fire on Jake's team. Traitors. The rebels had infiltrated deeper than anyone realized. This way, Commander Vex appeared leading a group of loyal guards. The main hall is compromised. We must get the princess to the ancient stronghold beneath the palace. They ran through corridors that shook with explosions. Jake kept Princess Ilara protected with his body, using his armor to shield her from falling debris. Behind them, he could hear fighting. The palace was under full assault. They reached the secure lift that would take them to the stronghold, an ancient bunker built when the palace was first constructed. But more traitor guards blocked their path. Protect the princess, Vex shouted, engaging the traitors with his personal guard. Jake pushed Ilara into cover behind a pillar and joined the fight. The combat was brutal and close. His human training served him well in the chaos. While the traitors expected formal combat, Jake fought dirty and efficient. He disabled 3 attackers quickly, clearing a path to the lift. Go, now, Jake shouted. They piled into the lift, but Queen Seraphina wasn't with them. Jake realized with horror that in the confusion they had been separated from the queen. We have to go back for her, Ilara said desperately. My queen is protected by the elite guard. They will get her to safety. You are the heir. You are the priority, Vex said firmly, activating the lift. They descended into the ancient stronghold, a massive underground complex that could sustain thousands of people for months if necessary. But they weren't the only ones heading there. Jake's tactical instinct screamed warnings. This is a trap. The rebels knew we would come here. They planned for it, Jake said as the lift descended. The stronghold is impenetrable, Vex insisted. Nothing is impenetrable, not if the enemy knows you're coming. The lift opened into the stronghold's main hall. It was massive, carved from solid rock with crystal lighting that had burned for millennia. Ancient weapons hung on the walls, relics of old wars, and waiting for them were dozens of rebel soldiers. I told you the human would come, said a familiar voice. Lord Kalen, the noble who had always despised humanity, stepped forward. He wore combat armor now, not formal robes. Captain Morrison, so predictable, so determined to save the princess. It made planning this so much easier. Kalen, you are behind this? Ilara said, shocked. You are family. Our houses have been allied for generations, and for generations I have watched our empire weaken, making peace with inferior species, allowing humans to walk our sacred halls. Your mother has made us soft. It is time for new leadership. Leadership that will restore Valtherus' glory. By murdering the royal family, that's not glory. That's treason, Jake said, assessing their situation. They were outnumbered 5-1. The lift was their only exit, and it was already rising back up, controlled by the rebels. It is evolution. The princess dies. The queen dies. I take control of the council and restore proper order. It is quite simple. Kalen smiled coldly. And you, human, will be the first to die. Your death will prove that human methods are inferior to our traditions. Kalen gave the order to attack. The rebels surged forward and chaos erupted in the ancient hall. Commander Vex and his guards formed a defensive circle around Princess Ilara, fighting desperately against overwhelming numbers. Jake knew they couldn't win a straight fight. They needed something different, something unexpected. He looked at the ancient weapons on the walls and had an idea. A crazy idea. A human idea. Vex, get the princess to the far corridor. I'll buy you time, Jake shouted. You cannot hold them alone, Vex protested. Watch me. Jake ran toward the wall where ancient weapons hung. He grabbed a ceremonial blade, a plasma rifle that was probably older than human civilization, and something that looked like a grenade. He didn't know if the weapons still worked, but he was about to find out. The ancient plasma rifle hummed to life in his hands. Jake smiled grimly. Good. The Valtherus built things to last. He opened fire on the rebels, the ancient weapon hitting with surprising power. The attack scattered the rebels, giving Vex time to move the princess, but there were too many enemies. They adapted quickly, flanking Jake from multiple directions. He fought like a cornered animal, using every trick he had learned in years of military service. The ceremonial blade, designed for ritual, became a weapon in his hands. The ancient grenade turned out to be some kind of energy burst that knocked down 6 rebels at once. Jake was bleeding from multiple wounds when Princess Ilara's voice cut through the chaos. Enough. She stood in the corridor entrance, no longer hiding behind guards. In her hands she held one of the ancient weapons from the stronghold walls, and her expression was fierce. Ilara, no. Stay back! Jake shouted, I am done hiding. I am done letting others fight for me. I am the heir to this empire, and I will defend it.